everybody. I apologize for the late start due to technical problems. You know what they say? They say better late than never, but better never late. So I'm sure that I hope that everybody will forgive the late start. In the schus of my wife, I was zeicher to hear part of the shiur that Simon Jacobson gave to the ladies to the Kinus Hashluchas. And I must tell you that this was very, very inspiring. It was an amazing shiur. And he related an incident. He said that because he was Magia, the Rebbe's sichos, he corrected and wrote in, he was one of the Vard, one of the committee who edited and wrote in the sichos after a Shabbos farbrengens, and the Rebbe would look these over and correct them. He had the opportunity at certain times to ask the Rebbe personal questions on things that the Rebbe had said, or general inyonim of Chassidus. And one of the things that he asked the Rebbe was in the Sharblat, in the introductory page where the Alter Rebbe describes the matara, the goal of writing the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that the whole of the Tanya, all the 5 parts of the Tanya, are based on the pasuk Ki korov eilecha hadova ma'od b'ficha u'bilvavcha la'asosei. So normally that is, this pasuk in the end of Nitzavim is translated Ki korov eilecha, that it's very close to you to internalize the Torah and put it into practice b'ficha, in your mouth, v'lvavcha, and in your heart, la'asosei, to perform all the mitzvahs of the Torah. So he asked the Rebbe, why was it necessary for the Alter Rebbe to write a whole sefer to show that the Torah was close within the reach of every one of us? And he asked the Rebbe if one could translate the word korov not as close, but as relevant. And the Rebbe was very happy with that suggestion, with that translation, because ultimately the whole of Tanya and the whole of Chassidus is how to make Torah relevant to us. Very often we have the question, we learn about dinim which only applied at the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Dinim we're now learning in Rambam, the dinim of tzaras, of leprosy, which is not pertinent today. And the question arises in our minds, what relevance does this have to us today? And the whole purpose of Chassidus and ultimately of Torah is to show us that everything that we learn in Torah is pertinent and is relevant to us. And he told a very interesting story that Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, the son of his daughter, Deborah Leah, who gave up her life to save her father's life, which is an amazing story, but not for now. Tzemach Tzedek had a chush. The Tzemach Tzedek had a special talent in two areas: in negina, in song, and in seer, in able to use his imagination to picture things in his mind, which was very special and very unusual. But Tzemach Tzedek was frightened that the chush in negina, that the talent of melody, of song, of music, could take away, could detract from his devotion to the study of Torah. So he prayed to Hashem to take away the chush of negina, take away the talent of music, the talent of song. Then the Chassidim, this is before the Tanya was printed, and Chassidim began to learn the manuscripts of the Tanya, and they came to the Alter Rebbe and they asked the Alter Rebbe they asked the Alter Rebbe, he said, they're learning the Tanya, but it's not having an effect on them, it's not changing them. So the Alter Rebbe said that the reason is you've only got half of the story. You're only learning the seichel, you're only learning the intellect of Chassidus, of the Tanya. What's missing is the nigun. What's missing is the melody, is the song. When the Tzemach Tzedek heard this, the Tzemach Tzedek prayed to Hashem that Hashem should give him back the chush of negina. Because unless Torah is a song, unless Torah is for us a melody, then, excuse me, my apologies. Unless Torah is for us a melody, something which we want to internalize, something which is relevant to us, then the Torah is not going to have the desired effect. Rabbi Jacobson said there's a maimah ha'olam that when you teach, people do not care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. If you're teaching Torah, then what's important is that you're making the subject relevant to your students. Your students have to feel that this is not some kind of abstract, beautiful collection of ideas, but it's something which you care about and which you want them to care about and want them to make what you're learning relevant in every aspect of their lives. And this is an important lesson for a teacher, and this is an important lesson for every one of us when we learn Torah. When we learn, we have to understand that every concept and every idea and every word that we learn is relevant to us. It's going to change us. It's going to make us into different people. Okay, that was the Hakadama to the Shiur. That was the introduction to the Shiur. Last week, we began to talk about the creation of the Sitra Achra, of the forces of evil in the world. And I mentioned last week, if you remember, that there is a big problem. And the problem is a very simple one. Nothing in the universe can exist for 1 second without a constant influx of divine energy. How is it possible for the evil to get energy, divine energy, from Hashem when Hashem hates the clippers? This is the opposite of Ratzon Hashem. Now, do any of you remember the answer that we began a little bit to discuss last week? Does anyone remember what we said?
Which is it through Vegas, perhaps?
Sorry?
Is Shem if I'm saying correctly, Shem is thought by Vegas, is that correct? And the evil forces are
No. But before we get to any Averis, the problem is, how do you get from Hashem to the evil? We said last week, we learned last week at length, that only something which is bottled, only something which effaces itself before the presence of Hashem can get chayus, can get energy from Hashem. The clippers, by definition, the forces of evil, by definition, are not bottled to Hashem. So the problem is, how can the clippers, how can the forces of evil draw chayus from Hashem, from the Eibishter?
Isn't that the symptom?
Okay, so we began to develop the idea that through many tzimtzumim, very many contractions, the Ur of Hashem is so reduced that it's totally obscured. The Kedusha in the clippers is there, but it's totally obscured. And in other places, in Tanya and Chassidus, this is called Seid Golus Hashchina, the secret of the Golus of the Shechina, that the Shechina goes into Golus in order to create the clippers, in order to create the evil, in order to give us free choice. Please tell me if what I'm saying is clear and makes sense. Reb David.
Yes, Rabbi, it makes sense. I needed to hear more though.
Sorry?
are needing to hear more, which is coming, of course.
Right, right. Okay, as long as so far is understood, we can now go further.
Wait, can I just read my understanding? There's the symptom means that there. I actually say in Shabbos, Yoter or Borei Choshech. The Borei Choshech. There's let's call it, I don't know, Borei Choshech. There's a Bria, which is, let's say, just emptiness. There's Bechira. Within that emptiness, Hashem gives man Bechira.
That's correct.
So I guess in that empty space, in which man has Bechira, evil can exist, and that's as far as I got, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now continue inside in the Tanya. Okay. So we're on page 20. We are 3 lines from the bottom of page 3 lines from the bottom of page 20. The line begins lihios, the last word on the line. V'lochen nikra olam hazeh umloi olam haklippus b'sitra achra. And therefore this world, our material physical world, is called the olam haklippus, the world of the evil, the husks, the sitra achra on the other side. V'lochin kol ma'aseh olam hazeh koshim v'roim, and therefore everything that happens in this world is tough, is difficult, is unpleasant, is evil. V'harashoim govrim boi, and the wicked are successful. Ramat Beit Shemesh Shar Mem Beis Seperim Daled. Okay, I'm now going to learn the Hagor, the additional note. Now, the Rebbe in this note wants to explain that even though the Kedusha is almost totally obscured in the Klippus, sof the mocker, the source of the divine energy is still there. Im hayos b'seicha esa tfiras da'asiyah de Kedusha, even though within the Klippus there are the 10 spheres of Asiyah, the Kedusha, Ramat Beit Chaim Shar Mem Gimel, B'teich 10 spheres the Asiyah Elu, in 10 spheres the Yetzirah, and in these 10 spheres of Asiyah, there deep down there are the 10 spheres of Yetzirah. The next world up, B'seichen 10 spheres the Brio, B'seichen 10 spheres the Atzilus, and the 10 spheres of Yetzirah, and in them are the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Shebeteichen Ein Sof Baruch Hu, that in the 10 spheres of Atzilus is the Ein Sof, is the infinite light of Hashem Himself. V'nimtza Ein Sof Baruch Hu molei chol ha'oretz aleizu hatachtono, and therefore the Ein Sof fills the entire space of the whole universe. Al yidei slabshusa be'esa spheres the arba elamus atzilus bria yitzira asiyah k'meshikosu Beit Chaim Shar Mem Zayin Perek Beis v'seifel Gilgulim Perek Chof. So the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us here that although the Kedusha is almost totally obscured, still, in spite of that, within the core of the spheres, which are connected ultimately with the spheres in Atzilus, is the infinite of Hashem. This, by the way, was an enormous source of machlokes between the Alter Rebbe and the Vilna Gaon, because the Vilna Gaon and his Talmidim said that it is impossible for the Eibishter to exist within the Klippos. They had a very, very major problem as how Hashem could create the Klippos, and the answer of the Alter Rebbe it was that the Klippos were created by a process of screening off the Kedusha till the effect of the Kedusha would be totally obscured and not felt by the Klippos, by the forces of evil. So far, so good. Hello?
Yes, Rabbi, it's not a simple matter. Thank you.
Rav David, I agree with you that this is not a simple matter at all, but within the restrictions of our limited intelligence, we try and understand as much as we can. Seder?
Yes, Seder.
Okay, good. So let's continue. Elo shehaklippos henechlokes l'shtei madregas. The klippos are divided into two madregas, two different degrees, two different levels. Zu lamata mizu, one below the other. Madregach tachteino isholish klippos atmeis v'rois legamri. The bottom three there is no good in them. They are completely unclean, and no good within them at all. V'nikro b'merkeves Yechezkel, and they are called in the vision of Yechezkel. Yechezkel saw a vision of Hashem's throne, and it says that he saw a ruach so'ora, a stormy wind, v'onon godel, and a great cloud. And then it also says Eish Mish A. Alter Rebbe doesn't actually bring this. It says Eish Mislakachas, fiery fire. Umehen Mishbois v'Nimishois Nimshachas Nafshes Kol Umus Evde Gilulim V'Kiyum Gufom V'Nafshes Kol Balei Chayim Atmeim Asurim Bachilo. And these three klippos are the metaphysical power of the souls which sustain the bodies of all the wicked nations of the world. V'nafshis kol balei chayim hatzmeim, and the souls of all the unclean animals. v'kiyum v'chayis kol macholos asuros mehatzameach, and the energy which gives life to all the forbidden foods, kumei orlo v'kilai hakerem, like orlo is from a fruit or a tree. You're not allowed to use to eat or use the fruit from the first 3 years. The kilai hakerem, and a mixture of 2 different species of seeds. Bates Chaim Shar Memtes Perek Vov. Now, there's something which I have to point out here, which is very, very important. Yechezkel Hanovi saw a vision of Hashem's chariot. Chas v'sholem, to say that Hashem's chariot was surrounded by the Gimel Klippos Hatmeas, by the 3 unclean clippers. The Alter Rebbe is very careful and medayek in his words, because he says, "Umehen nishpois v'nimshoches nafshes kol umas evde gilulim," that these are the spiritual source of all the things which are Tomei. Not chas v'sholem, to think for a moment that what Yechezkel saw were the Gimel Klippos Hatmeas. This was the spiritual source which later would be the marker, would be the source of the Klippos. Is that clear to everybody? Yes?
Yeah.
David?
Yes, when we finish, I will have to study this again. Okay.
Sorry?
When we finish, I will have to really study this again. Thank you. It's fresh concepts to me.
Okay, these are not easy. These are not easy concepts, and I want to tell you that I've learned this many, many times, and every time I learn this perek, I see new things and get new insights. It's one of the most challenging parts of the Tanya. Okay. Okay, now let's finish the perek. Ramat Beit Chaim Shar Memtes Perek Vov v'chein kiyum v'chayis kol ha'maise dibu u'machshava shel kol sheso lo yisaseh b'anufeim u'meshukosov shom soif perek hey. So anything which is connected with any isur in the Torah, or something which is also the Rabbanon, right, is included in this category of Gimel Klippos Hatmeas, the 3 unclean clippers. And when we think or speak or do something which is tainted by any issur, by any prohibition, we are being Meisef Chayas, we are adding spiritual energy to these Gimel Klippos Hatmeas to these unclean clippers. Okay. So now we are going to move into a new area where the Alter Rebbe is going to explain the second category of clippers. The second category of clippers is called Klippas Noiga. Klippas Noiga means the translucent shell. And it's given this name by the Mekubolim, by the Kabbalists, because this klippa is not totally evil. It has sparks of Kedusha in it, and it is redeemable. We can bring out the Kedusha which is latent in this second category of klippas, and we can uplift this to Kedusha. Now, Alter Rebbe is going to explain that the Nefesh Habamis, our Nefesh Habamis, the Nefesh Habamis of every one of us, comes from Klipas Nega, comes from this fourth level of Klippa. And the amazing thing is that the Alter Rebbe says later in Tanya, and at greater length in Torah and in Likutei Torah, that the neshama, our nefesh Elokis, comes down to this world in order to be mevarer, in order to refine and uplift the guf, the physical body, and the nefesh habamis, our animal instincts, which are from Klipas Nega, from this fourth Klippa. Because embedded in this fourth Klippa, which includes everything, all the material objects in the world around us, this table, the food that I had for supper tonight, the clothing that I'm wearing, etc., etc. All these are from Klipas Nega. Klipas Nega in our world is predominantly good or evil? Good or evil?
Evil.
Evil. It's predominantly evil. We are here to rectify that. We are here to change the equilibrium. Because every time we use Olam Hazeh, the material things in this world, for Kedusha, we are rescuing the sparks of Kedusha which are embedded in Klipas Nega and bringing them back to source. And that's why our neshama came down to Olam Hazeh. In case you didn't know. Okay, that was supposed to get you to smile.
That's sure does.
I can't see anybody's face, so I can't see the smile. I prefer, because since we started late, if we could have the questions at the end.
Okay.
Because it disturbs the flow.
Sure.
Yeah, at the end of the Shem, yes, Hashem. Okay. Perek Zayin, Ach, Nefesh HaChiyunis Habamis, the physical animal soul should be Yisrael, Shemitzad HaKlippo, which comes from the Klippo, Amlubeshes B'dam Ha'odam Kaniz Kol Ha'el, which is enclosed in the blood of a person, Kaniz Kol Ha'el, as mentioned above in Perek Beis, V'nafshes, V'hames, V'chayes, V'eifes, V'dogim, Teherim, Umutorim, B'achilo, and the souls of the animals, the creatures, the birds, the fish, which are toher, which are permitted to be eaten. Mutorim b'achilo, V'kiyum v'chayis kol hadoimim, and the kiyum, the existence of all the inanimate world, v'chol hatzameach, and all the plant world, hamuter ba'achila, which is permitted to be eaten, v'chein kiyum v'chayis kol ha'maise diba u'machshava b'inyonei olam hazeh she'ein bohem tzad isa lo sheresh lo onof mishasa mitzvahs lo yisei v'anafeihen. And the kiyum, the existence of every act and speech and thought in affairs of this world, which have no connection to anything which is forbidden. Lo sheresh, not the source, lo onof, and not a branch. Mishasor mitzvahs lo yisaseh, from the 365 don'ts, va'anfeihen, and their branches, deraisa u'derabonon. But it wasn't done l'shem shomayim, it wasn't done to serve Hashem. L'rotzen haguf v'cheftzei v'tavosei, but it was the desire of the body, v'cheftzei, and its desire, v'tavosei, and its desire, v'afilu l'tzerech haguf v'kiyumei v'chayusei, and even you're eating something which is necessary because you need to eat in order to keep the body and soul together. Ela shekavonose eino l'shem shomayim, but his kavona is not l'shem shomayim, for the sake of heaven, kedei lavedes Hashem begufei, not to be able to use the energy from the food to serve Hashem with his body. Loi adithi, it's not better, maise dibu machshavas elu, this action, speech and thought, minefesh achiyunis habamis ba'atzmo, from the nefesh habamis, for the animal soul in itself. So what's the Alter Rebbe saying here? If you remember, last week we discussed at length that there is no such thing as a neutral action. Something is either holy or it's unholy. There's no parav. So my wife made a very special meal tonight, supper, because my daughter came to visit us. So she made special chicken and special vegetables and special salad, etc., etc. Now, let's say that I ate this wonderful meal because I was hungry, and I was hungry. I was very hungry, and I knew that I would have to give a Tanya shiur at 8:15, or at least it was supposed to be at 8:15. So I needed koyach. The crunch is, when I was having supper, did I have in mind that I'm eating this meal in order to get koyach to be able to serve Hashem, to be able to give the shiur? Or did I have the meal because I like my wife's chicken? Because if the answer is the second, then the chicken and the kedusha in that chicken remains unrefined, it remains in the hands of the klippos. It remains in the hands of klippos nega. In order to uplift the chayus, the spirituality in the food, a person has to have the kavana, the intention, not just to eat or whatever physical pleasure it is, because it's enjoyable, but you're not allowed, you're allowed to enjoy the food, but that should not be the raison d'etre. That should not be the main motive of eating the food. The main motive of eating the food is to get koyach to serve Hashem. And if you enjoy it as a byproduct, that's fine. There's no issa in that, as the Alter Rebbe will explain later in this parak. But to eat just for the sake of enjoying the chicken, that is wrong. Not only that is wrong, but you're being married, you're dragging down the highest, the spiritual energy which is in the food that you're eating. Clear to everyone? Hello?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Oh, David. David.
Yes, hi, Rabbi.
That clear?
Yes, that's very clear.
He's not uplifting the Kedusha. The word
Yes.
expression he's dragging down, but I understand he's not.
We'll talk about, brought some pork, and he said, you're now going to eat this pork in front of the whole camp. And the man said, no. He said, I'm not going to eat the pork. And the German officer said, if you don't eat the pork, I'm going to shoot you on the spot. He said, it's fine. He said, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to eat the pork. And the German officer took out his gun and he put two bullets through his head. And, he was Mekadesh Shem Shomayim Barabim, even though till then he'd been on the other side. I promised that there would be an opportunity to ask questions. Anybody who would like to ask any questions now is very welcome to do so.
I understood before that if they were saying this world is a place of evil.
Right.
But in the Hallelujah in Tehillim, we speak about how all of the Bria does the avodas Hashem, all the plant life, animal life. They do according to Ratzon.
Yeah, but we've got to wear the glasses of David HaMelech to be able to see that. Right?
Well, I mean, like the sun does what it has to do, the moon, the constellations.
Right.
I mean, like if we think of the sun and the moon, then we're not where the constellations, where's the evil in creation? They do their job. We're supposed to be like that. And do the Ratzon Hashem. How can we call the creation evil? How can we say, I understood you saying that basically this world is evil?
It's evil because the Kedusha is concealed. And it's only after an enormous effort we are able to reveal the core, the neshama. But naturally, that is concealed, that's covered over. Yes.
Short question.
Yes.
Today's Tanya stated, and we keep developing this idea of actually even things like a meal, as long as the meal which we consume is not for the sake of serving Hashem, is actually klipa gemura, right?
Right.
So how really achievable, sort of, how doable, achievable for us, for human beings, to come to the darga that every meal what we consume, we will bear in mind that that very meal is not just, to keep us alive, but instead for Hashem's service. How, for human being, how doable, how achievable to come to such madrega?
Your question is a very good question, Mordechai, and I'm going to add to your question, because we've been used for so many years of our lives just to eat because we're hungry, right?
Right.
So we need to retrain our whole thinking, right? We need to reorientate our whole look on the world. But when you look through the glasses of the Tanya, of the Alter Rebbe, the world, if you see the world as naturally evil, and you're going to bring out the Kedusha in the world, that makes it a lot easier. It's a lifetime's process of working upon ourselves and training ourselves.
Lifetime process. Okay.
What about simple statement of intent? What about a simple statement on eating in order to have koach to serve Hashem?
You know, the Rebbe Marash once said, for a fool to fool a fool is not a kunst. There's nothing clever in, a fool fooling a fool. Just to say at the beginning of the meal,
Okay.
I'm eating this meal, to serve Hashem, and then to overeat and to indulge on everything which is tasty, in spite of the fact that it's not healthy, is not really clever. I was reading an article in one of the, I have to tell you, I have to be honest. I was reading an article in one of the Hamodia magazines, and in this article it says that as a result of the corona, people are getting out less and the gyms are closed and doing much less exercise. And statistics have shown that a person who is unfit and overweight is much more likely to suffer the corona much more seriously than somebody who does exercise and is more fit. So they advise going for a walk every day, even though it's only for a few minutes. Any more questions?
Well, I presume it's as the Rav explained, the lifetime process, the lifetime task to internalize, to digest, to begin to wear the Admur against spectacles, glasses, just in order to be able to perceive the world in a way that every meal we eat and everything we have, not in order to indulge in those things, but actually to serve Hashem. Oh, okay. As long as Admor gave us the book and gave us the promise that we are able to gather, so it's supposed to be very inspiring.
Yeah, we've got to have bitochen in Hashem, that if we do our part, he'll do his part. Right?
Yeah. I still think it starts with a statement of intent. From Rav Reuven Loister, his Vadim, that was that was the subject of a Vad Musar. Just make a statement of intent. I think that's the start to this lifetime work.
I'm not saying that a statement of intent is not a good thing. All I'm saying is it requires more than just saying a few words. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wish everybody good night, and to be continued next week at 8:15 on time, Be'ezras Hashem. Ariel, thank you very much for all the help.
I'm sorry, I have an apology to make for I was preoccupied with my work-related issues, and for some reasons I messed up